I think a lot of the time in the last couple of months I've been living off a very highly adrenalised pattern, and it takes quite a long time for your body to break free of this habit pattern as well. So what I noticed for even 6 or 7 days into the retreat is that my adrenals were still almost constantly kicking in. And the other problem you get when you get in this particular energetic dynamic within the body is that as your adrenals kick in, it's linked to your, it's like the fight or flight system really. And the first system which also starts to shut down when we kick into fight or flight is actually the digestion. So you get this vicious cycle that goes on because you're in fight or flight, your body feels under threat almost. It starts to affect your digestive efficiency, which makes things even worse. So you've got your liver still demanding all these things you need to do, your adrenals still kicking in to try and get all these things done, and then your stomach and spleen or your earth elements suffering even less because, working even less efficiently because your digestion is affected by the pattern of the other organs. And how I'd find this for me is I wouldn't feel particularly hungry during the day. Again, I think this is a common pattern of a lot of people. And when you get towards the evening, you might feel just like eating a lot to almost like quench or quell some of the internal heat that's going on. So I actually had that pattern running inside me for days while I've been here, while it's been trying to calm down. And I also treat that quite a lot of acupuncture. The other thing that's really fascinating to see from the Chinese medicine perspective is that every 4 hours or every 2 hours, the body moves, the energy moves in the body between different organs or different paired organs. So every 4 hours it moves between different elements in the body, and every 2 hours it moves between different organs within those elements. And so I'd notice how every 4 hours I could really see how my mental landscape and how I'd be feeling in my body would really change in accordance with how where the energy was internally in terms of what organs it was passing through at the time. So between 7 and 11 in the morning in particular, when the energy was most in my earth element, because my actual physical body has been so depleted of recent, I'd actually just want to sleep a lot between 7 and 11, just to let some of that energy rebalance of the earth energy. And then in the afternoons, when the water element, where the energy is most passing through my kidney and bladder between 3 and 7, I'd feel like really getting a lot of dialogue about, oh Rich, you need to slow down, because obviously this is what my kidneys are talking to me. They're saying, Rich, you need to slow down, you need to take it easier. And I'd really feel then like my adrenals were really kicking off as well, as the organs there were trying to desperately get some balance. And then the funny thing is that it'd get towards the evening, past 6 o'clock, past 7 o'clock, when you get back into more of the wood element again and fire element, and once again the whole mental and feeling landscape would change as those organs took ascendancy again, and I'd find myself really thinking and feeling, oh yeah, I've got all these things to do again, got to do this and this. So all day your energy is constantly circulating between the different organs of the body, but when you're in balance it moves smoothly between them and they all balance one another. So there's not an excess drive and there's not an excess lethargy, but the whole thing kind of balance out. So obviously when I got here I was super tired and run down, so I could really notice that going on. I think we spend a lot of our time, and I really noticed this when I got here, is that we spend a lot of time in quite a heightened brainwave pattern. Like we don't spend enough time actually moving at the pace of our physical matter, and a lot of what we do in the Western world now is almost like about trying to keep up with the speed of your thoughts. When we're very busy rushing around, it's almost like you're trying to keep up with yes, got to do this, got to do that, and you're constantly trying to speed your body up to match the speed of your brain, of that brainwave pattern. And also a lot of what we do, computers, even being on phones nowadays as well, it's all very kind of head driven, and so we cease to notice actually how tired our body gets sometimes. And I think I've been particularly lately, I've been spending way too much time on my computer. It's difficult to do nowadays, but you ever notice when you're on your computer or your laptop, you kind of end up getting sucked into it and you don't sometimes even notice the messages you're getting back off your body. You get these extreme examples of people who play on computers for days, and don't even notice the messages, feeling hungry. And I'll sometimes get like that myself, but it was a massive lesson when I got here, when I actually started to slow down. I could see how actually tired my physical body was. And it's the same when you run off adrenaline, or again getting that when you're rushing around as well, that puts you in a certain brainwave pattern where you're not really feeling the messages of your body as well. And I had an example of that. It was after 2 days I'd been here, and I felt like I'd really started to relax a little bit. There was one particular moment where I had to do something quite quickly, and straight away I could see, as I went into that really focused state, that I was no longer feeling my body. I dashed from one place to another. Then afterwards, again, it's almost like you can distract yourself by rushing around. And afterwards I come back down, I felt into my tiredness again. But I think a lot of time in our life we get on this continual cycle of rushing. And it's almost like a way of not feeling what we're doing, of not feeling our body and how depleted it becomes. In terms of some of the actual experiences I've had while on the retreat, first thing I'd say is that like this type of meditation is by no means about inducing sort of esoteric Vipassana meditation, I should probably say. It's by no means about inducing like an esoteric or etheric experiences. Really, it's a fantastic, potent meditation. It's very body centered. The idea being that you continue passing your attention through your body, so that you eventually become equanimous. You start to remain equanimous to your body sensations, which brings you out of attachment and craving and aversion, really, because it's identified, or the people who set up this technique, who teach this technique, identify that it's our body sensations is what we're actually reacting to. In any situation where we're craving something or got a very strong aversion to something, they see that like say if you're addicted to something, what comes first, it's not the external object, it's the fact that it creates a body sensation that we experience first. We actually get addicted to our own body sensations, or develop quite a strong aversion to our own body sensations. So by continuing to pass your attention through your body, you learn to become equanimous to these, and it helps to break the pattern, like the habit pattern of constantly reacting to your own body sensation. It's actually a very grounded meditation, I find, and it's very strong. But like I said, and I've actually done 3 of these 10-day retreats before, and every time it's been different. I don't always experience things on quite a subtle level as this, but this time it's particularly much so. An example would be that on the first day, I was very, very tired, but after the first full day I went to sleep, and I slept for about an hour, and I actually woke up and I felt myself experiencing a really, really bright like white light energy, almost like as if it was shining in either through my crown chakra or somewhere around my third eye. And I have actually experienced this before. I experienced it about 3 years ago when I was ill one winter as well, and as the illness was clearing, once again I experienced this bright light white energy. And I also experienced it after I'd done some shamanic ceremonies as well a few years ago. And the origins or roots of this, some people might say it's your kundalini energy, some people might say maybe it's like a high vibration light energy that exists, that we can tune into. I know a lot of energy healers work with the idea of passing like high vibration energy through the body, because it moves denser energies. Like denser energies can be dispersed by high vibration light energies. And I know I used to do, before I did acupuncture, I used to do a little bit of energy work with my hands, and I used to write about how passing like high vibration light energy through disperses and dispels blocks within the body. And so I was aware, quite surprisingly, of this really high vibration energy passing through me, and I'd feel at the time while it was happening different parts of my body relaxing. So it's a very type of healing type experience, like I said, but it's not necessarily something you can readily induce. And then after about 4 days, actually the other thing I noticed around that time as well is people talk about orbs of light as being linked to maybe spiritual entities, or like spirits that come back down, and you see their orbs of light that you see, which are connected, and they tend to get attracted to spiritual experiences or spiritual places or spiritual activities, and I could see around me during this time. I could see a lot with my third eye, as if I could see two orbs of light with me a lot of the time. So whether there was some kind of spirit being, again, I don't know. I don't always interpret things very clearly on that level. And after about 4 days, similarly, after my fourth full day, I went to sleep again, and again woke up after about another hour to once again experience, like this time much more potently, this really high vibration, strong light passing through my body, as if I was being given like a really, really strong dose of this energy. Again, kind of who knows where or why. I'm not really sure. I know it's very, very powerful. The first 2 or 3 days I felt absolutely really so tired. First 2 or 3 days of this retreat. If I sounded a bit, obviously yesterday, I'm aware I might not have been quite as on the case as I am today with it and sounding quite as sharp, and I guess still having just come out of a 10-day meditation retreat, I was perhaps a little bit relaxed, I think we'll say. So if the early part of this blog kind of sounded a little bit drawn out, then that's the way it was, I suppose. Yeah, sometimes people, when your body actually gets time and space to rest, it's quite often when a lot of deep cleansing happens, and after times when we can feel quite ill. I know a lot of people when they go on holiday, they can actually feel quite sick. I think a lot of deep cleaning and maintenance can almost happen, and it's something to do having the time and space and permission for the body to actually do that. I guess I got here and obviously I knew I had 10 whole days, and so my body just completely let go. And another thing that's quite interesting was when I got to about the 4th day, actually for the first 3 days, because I was so tired, I got in a pattern of actually wanting to eat quite a lot, but the feedback I was getting from the body, and I was hearing a lot of dialogue in my mind, and also actually feeling on another level like I didn't want to eat. And so when it got to the 4th day, I decided to trust that. I'm not always such a massive advocate of fasting. I think you've got to do it in the right circumstances, right environment, and know what you're doing a little bit with it. But given I had 10 whole days here, and it felt completely what my body wanted, people don't eat when they're ill as well, and I was obviously undergoing some kind of deep process. And so I didn't eat on day 4 at all, which felt completely okay. And in the end, I think I went about 40 hours without eating. I believe after about 24 hours, the processes in the body which are normally engaged with dealing with your digestion, like digestive enzymes and things, after 24 hours they go out and scavenge in your blood, because they're no longer, I guess, preoccupied with dealing with the incoming, food stuff. So after 24 hours, a lot of deep cleansing can happen if you don't eat for that long. Like I said, I don't necessarily always advocate that. And then interestingly, after about 40 hours had passed and the next meal time arose, I did genuinely feel like eating again. It wasn't like an intellectual thing. I actually went and got some food and ate it and did feel much better. I only had a little bit to start with, and I was dead pleased about that, because it kind of told me I'd shut down my digestion a little bit and then restarted it, and it was okay again. The next thing I was going to talk about was quite often in such a finely tuned state as well, a finely aware state of having been meditating for 10 days, I was really, really aware of the interlink between imbalances in my organs with the mental dialogue, the emotional feeling that was going on, and also muscle groups in my body. So there's a link between what's happening in the organ, obviously your dialogue, like I said, and different muscle groups. And there's one particular night, I think I mentioned earlier on in the blog, I feel like I've been having a lot of issues with around my liver, stomach, spleen, kidney. They've all been a little bit strained and stressed due to the busyness that I've been experiencing prior to this retreat. And I think there's a lot of tightness in my abdomen, and it was really obvious and clear to me one night. I was lying in bed, and the mental dialogue, I was feeling agitated, and the mental dialogue reflected that. I was hearing a lot of worrying, anxious type thoughts passing through my head, and I felt really heavy as well. And what was really interesting, as I was lying there at one moment, I felt something really release in my abdomen area. Obviously, what I'm saying, there's been a lot of strain on those organs. And something released and cleared. And instantaneously in that moment, I also felt my mental dialogue, mental picture completely change, and also certain muscle groups that are associated with those organs completely let go and relax as well. And it's just really funny, sometimes we don't even know we've been holding muscles tight until they actually relax and release. And I said, but in that example, it was just so clear. And the other thing was, it wasn't just the dialogue I was experiencing in my mind, it's also the way it feels. I think I said when this released and I felt like my gut released and I could breathe back easily into my belly. That's what we do when we're in a relaxed state. If you imagine a young child at ease, at peace, when it breathed in, it breathed really deeply into its abdomen, really, happily. And so when that released in me, the other thing that shifted, like I said, was the emotional quality of what I was feeling. So instantaneously the mental patterns changed, and as did how I felt. And I think that's because there'll certainly be biochemical reactions coming off organs that are strained, but I think they talk about it as well as like you get certain chemical pathways in the brain, or I don't know, I guess like a neuroscientist might be able to explain it a little bit better. But yeah, I guess as that organ released, it actually changed the chemical sense of what I was feeling. In my opinion, doing acupuncture, it's because the organ released and relaxed, then it affects your nervous system and the neural pathway. And so I just felt much better all of a sudden. And again, it's another lesson that sometimes we act from these places of imbalances. And if I'd have acted from that place, if it had been in my everyday life as an experience in such strain as that, and I'd have acted on it, I wasn't acting from my best potential really. And when that little block released that I'd been experiencing in my abdomen, I felt much better. And it can sometimes, again, I suppose if the stress gets put back on, the block can return. But certainly after that was a bit of a turning point. I felt much clearer. I said it was much more of an awareness of there's just some kind of restriction there which was creating the thought patterns. It also reminds me of a few years ago, I used to spend time with one person in particular, and when I was with her, again, sometimes if I'd been experiencing agitation in my mind, I used to notice when I'd be close with her, that I guess the resonance of her energy and the comforting nature of it would allow something similar to release in me. And I always used to notice how my, again, like the agitation in my mind would shift at the same time as a particular muscle group would shift as well, connected to that organ. It was a sort of angry type of dialogue I used to get and agitated. And I imagine at the time it's probably from my liver as well, maybe I've been overdoing the work again. And yeah, it's just really fascinating being around an energy of someone that I found more heart opening. It obviously helped to balance that out a little bit and relax and relieve it all. Yeah, so it's just really clear. And just another thing about the, I guess like I said, as acupuncturists who work with that awareness of the organ, the muscle groups, and the dialogue, your mental, emotional state being interconnected. It's also similar with kinesiology. They also identify imbalances in the organs via those muscle groups too. Then we also work with the different channels as well, the different particular energy channels of the body, the different meridian channels that associate with the organs. So again, sometimes we can look for symptoms along channel pathways that again associate back to those organs as well. Right, what else have I got on my little list here? Yeah, I guess another thing which is really obvious to me as well is while I've been here, my process is really, because it's had the time and space to engage its own healing processes, it's just really had the time to release a lot. I think release of tension has been a massive factor. And it's really interesting because I could see after a few days as well, my posture really changing. And I practice quite a lot of yoga, but it just reinforced to me that quite often with things like that, what you're looking for is the release of tension. And when you get the release of tension, then muscle groups change and your posture changes. And I'm not by any means negating the effects of sometimes of other types of yoga, but I am quite a big fan of release rather than stretch. I think if you're in a tense state and sometimes you're stretching, that can afford a degree of release. But particularly with the style of yoga that I teach, I've got a massive focus on actually trying to get the body to relax enough for that tension to almost release of its own accord, and that'll shift your posture. And I noticed several nights or several days during the retreat, bit by bit, as I said, this tension dispersed from some of the organs in my body, then the muscle groups would relax and my posture would shift. And I now imagine I must feel about 2-3 inches taller. I mean, I'm probably not, but I just feel much more upright. All this tension that was sitting certainly around my kind of abdomen area, a lot of that's dispersed. And I think a lot of time when we get tension in the front of the body, it obviously affects our spine, because everything relates back to your spine. Your spine is attached to everything that happens in your body. It runs through everything. And so that was just really interesting as well to see that too. It was also really fascinating for me was I had some experiences that I relate to the idea of a person's spirit or spirit and how present your spirit is. And again, in Chinese medicine, in acupuncture, we look for this in the style of acupuncture that I did. We look for how present someone is. We say, sometimes someone's spirit might not be present, or someone's spirit's exhausted. And again, like when we treat them and diagnose people, we might look for this. And that's something even in everyday life we talk about, don't we? Like how spirited someone appears. And I guess I actually felt, to be honest, for the first 7 days of being here, I was barely present at all. And I think, again, like with the amount of strain I'd previously been under, in this temporary situation prior to getting here, that, my spirit had actually become exhausted. And I think we have to have times where our spirit, we get weary. And again, we talk about that in everyday life, don't we? We say someone's become really weary and the spirit's a bit beaten down. And I think your spirit needs to go off sometimes and resource itself. And I guess I'd been dashing about so much prior to getting here, and calling on the reserves of my spirit a lot. And again, I think I just exhausted it. So when I got here, it took the chance just to sort of disappear for a few days. And I was aware of what state I was in, but I just didn't feel very present. And people often sometimes get like that as well if there's been, maybe certain types of trauma, or maybe the physical body's weakened as well. It tends to, perhaps not hold the spirit so well. But what was interesting is it got to about day 7, and all of a sudden something interesting happened while I was meditating, and I felt much more present. And also the other thing was actually around that time, I'd walked into the hall as well to meditate on one particular occasion. And I've got to be honest, you're not particularly meant to be looking at the ladies, but a lady sitting on the other side of the room actually caught my eye, and again I felt much more present. And I think sometimes your spirit comes down and engages with your body when there's something going on that interests it, and that's why it's so essential in life to do things that you feel present and engaged in. I wrote about that one in my newsletters lately as well, that sometimes when we're doing something we don't particularly like, then part of our being, which I relate to as being your spirit, kind of checks out and isn't really present there anymore, which is really, it's not good. It's it's energetically it's really poor, because I experienced just such heaviness in me while I didn't feel present in my spirit. And the other thing is because your spirit is it's got an etheric quality, it's got high vibration to it. The more you can do things that gets your spirit into your body, the more it actually energises your body. And we think about this with people. We think some people are particularly spirited, and we think about how light they are and full of spirit. And I could really feel the difference when I felt the spirit come back down into my body, how much energised and light I felt afterwards. And before that I just felt really heavy, because I guess I experienced a lot of my physicality without my spirit being present, and it was really soothing. But as I said, I think we have to be very careful not to exhaust our spirit, or equally to exhaust our physical body, because your spirit wants to be housed, in a fit and healthy physical body. So again, it's about catering to all these parts of us. You've got to look after your most physical levels and your spirit level, and do things that engage you. And I felt like I was getting some pretty big insights. And again, like I said, this type of meditation doesn't necessarily, it's not focused on having insights as such, but I was getting insights about the fact that then we need to go and do things. Sometimes you can, that's why we have spiritual communions of sorts. I don't necessarily mean going to a church. People engage their spirit in different ways, but we go to these places, some place of worship or whatever works for you. Maybe some people meditate, some people dance, some people go to church, some people chant. But obviously you're engaging with a kind of spiritual type energy, which also feeds your spirit. And these places that we form on earth to do that, spiritual worship places, I was kind of getting some kind of insight that they act as conduits for this energy to come down. Then this kind of spirit type energy can then come down and nourish your spirit while you're on earth. It's almost like a gateway. So I think sometimes we're cruising around in our everyday life, you know, and your spirit can get a little bit neglected, or, you know, we're feeding our body, but sometimes you need to go somewhere that feeds your spirit too. And I was also seeing quite a lot of imagery while I was here. I said I don't always get this, and I can't always switch it on and off, you know, but seeing a lot of things that I saw around my own energy body. And again, sitting and meditating in that room for so long, I could almost feel like my crown chakra, or the top of my head, was open, and there was a sort of light energy coming down and into me while I was there. I guess like a kind of spiritual degree of refreshment or energy that was coming in. Yeah, and it felt really strong and really powerful. Sometimes I could see other chakras and energy centers, you know, lit up on my body as well. And yeah, again, like I said, just another lesson, not to exhaust the spirit, not to exhaust the physical body, but to yeah, find ways and places and meanings, you know, and your purpose really of feeding your spirit as well. Yeah, and just another note on that spirit point is again, yeah, to be aware then, like, you know, I said I felt an attraction, say, to that lady across the other side of the room, or I felt my spirit become engaged at that point, to follow that intelligence as well. And actually, yeah, because I think if you're not interested in something, your spirit's not always present anyway, but I felt really present all of a sudden, like some part of me had come alive. And I actually did, you know, note that and see that there was some kind of drawing towards this person. And I made a deliberate point of making sure that I went and found them later on when we got a chance. That, you know, the workshop, you know, was actually outside of the silence period at the end. I went and spoke to this person. It turned out, you know, there was actually a number of connections that we actually had. And so yeah, it just felt really important, you know, that I'd listened to that sign and signalling myself, and then gone and pursued it and done something about it. And you know, yeah, it was significant. And yeah, so there you go. Right, what's the next thing? Let's have a quick look on my list here. Like I said, I'm not quite sharp for this today because I've done it about 4 times already, and yeah, my phone's just not having it. Right, yeah, so I was also getting a lot of, sometimes when I sit like this, whether I'm tuning into information maybe that exists in the ether, or whether I'm kind of having information channeled into me, I'm not sure. You know, again, stuff on that level, who knows? So because it's intangible, I guess it's open to some degree of debate as to the exact dynamics of it. But either way, sometimes when I sit in situations like this, or do ceremonies like this with a high spiritual type energy, I feel like I kind of download information. And I get quite a lot of stuff around chakras. This time last year I did this same retreat, but I only did about 3 or 4 days, and ended up writing a load of work after to do with chakra dynamics, now the work in the body. And this time as well, while I was sitting there meditating, I felt like I was having a lot of realisations coming into me about how chakras work on the body and how they operate. And what happens, I think, is what I was getting is that the information's downloaded to me, like I perceive it as a vibration that comes in through my crown chakra, and then my conscious mind has to put language to it. So quite often I'd feel like I was getting this information coming into me, and then I was spending periods of time I was having to sit, or I was lying in bed trying to then put the words to fit to what I'd felt, or the vibration that I'd felt coming in through my chakra, my crown chakra. And I got quite a lot of stuff around the functions of maybe the first 4 chakras. Yeah, how we feel things through, or we have vibrations that come in through our crown chakra. You might see it as an image in your third eye, and then we can vocalize things through our throat. But when it gets down to our heart, that's where it kind of begins to fuse with your physical body and your physical matter. And this is really important to me, so I've been trying to do a bit of I've been chasing after a bit of information to do with this, or a bit of realisation around how this works, how our kind of map for life fuses with our physical body. And there's 3 chakras above and below the heart, and the heart's the one in the centre. So I've really got this sense that at the heart level, it is where you fuse together the incoming information that we tune into for our life with our physical body. And we feel it and sense it through our heart, because that's where the 2 things meet. And I kind of got this analogy that as people, how we kind of operate in balance is, if you imagine someone going out for a long walk across the hillsides, across the moors, maybe for quite a few days or whatever, they obviously need a map, but also they obviously need their physical resources and physical reserves. And the image I got as a person is that we actually get our map for our life is what we tune into through our upper centres. It's almost like, the subtle thoughts we get about what we might want to do next, what our purpose is in life. It all comes in through the upper centres, and then we obviously live it out through our body. But what we get sometimes is you might get, if we're too focused on the upper centres, it's almost like we get too focused on the map. So it'd be like someone walking around the moor or the hills, staring at the map all the time. Or like kind of not even being aware of what's really going on physically around them, because they're too interested in the map. Sometimes similarly you get some people maybe who are not particularly opened up on the upper centres. So they're walking around the moor kind of in the body, but not really knowing where they're going. So in balance, we've got this kind of information coming in of what to do in life, where to go, what our purpose is. But we also need to pay attention to our physical reserves, resources, and the physicality of how that manifests on Earth. Like I said, the 2 things fuse together. So we sense and feel that combination of the etheric, map type purpose energy coming in. We fuse it and we feel it in our hearts. That's what's really important, to pursue things and follow things that you actually feel in your heart. And you might often notice that you get sort of ideas and stuff that just stay as ideas, they float around in your head. And again, that'll be something that's coming in on the upper centres. But if it doesn't engage something in your heart, then we don't do anything on the physical plane, until maybe it either connects in that something happens that does meet with your heart or not. But it's just really important, like I say, if you do feel something in your heart, to follow it. That's where our acting, our kind of sensing on a more physical level occurs. And another thing that was very fascinating about doing this, on this particular occasion, was how, I guess like part of the meditation, you're really opening up your body and your energy body. Well, your physical body, energy body, the whole thing really, your chakras, everything's getting opened up. And, sometimes I'd be sitting there in meditation and revisiting experiences that I'd had with such clarity. It was remarkable. Whatever we engage with, sometimes we try and stay quite close to things and shut down from them. But a lot of times we absorb the vibrations of things that we engage with into our body. And I guess sitting there, and opening the body up in such a way as what we've just done, I think that's probably the purpose of the meditation. Is it's a big clearing process, really, on a very cellular level. That's my language, that's not how they explain it. But what's happening, in my opinion, is that you're sitting there, and particularly as well because you don't eat after 11 o'clock in the morning, so each day you go in, quite a few hours without eating, and it really facilitates the body to start to release. I said, an opening up to such a spirited energy, again my language, from above, you open up to quite a high vibration energy to pass through you, and it starts to clear and cleanse things from your system. And sometimes I'll be back in experiences that I had years and years ago, as if I was right there, right again, right now, and remaining equanimous to the sensations of that, i.e. keeping your attention moving through your body, through the sensations, without getting attached to them, allows them to come up and leave. But I remember being back in, some of my old universities, colleges, different experiences I've had with different people, with just incredible clarity. And there were certain times when I almost felt like I could go to any experience I wanted that I had and just revisit it, in the kind of immediacy. Again, this type of meditation is not perhaps about inducing that, but it was just very, very fascinating, revisited some stuff as well which wasn't quite as easy. And again, that's part of the learning, is that we can get very attached to pleasant sensation things, so maybe I was sitting there having some nice thoughts about something that happened with someone, or events, whatever, and it's easy to kind of fall back into that. And then when obviously then we're experiencing thoughts or memories that weren't so pleasant, we can kind of want to shy away from it. But opening up like this, you have to allow the body its chance to shift that through. And I talk about this as well in my mind-body work, that quite often when I work with people, I might open up, doing acupuncture, open up parts of the body where vibrations or memories have got stored, and then the person re-experiences it as they pass back through it. And I think there's quite a lot of that going on for me. I went to some very touching moments in my life, things that I thought had long gone, and inevitably, I should be quite a bit lighter now for a little while. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that. Actually, something else which came through for me is that I'd like to start, this is one of my ideas for this year, and that is that I'd like to start sharing a little bit of some of this knowledge that I've got. So I'd like to start doing sessions in London where maybe people can come and see me, and if they've just got questions about how things work, really, about any of my pools of knowledge of the body mind, someone can come and just sit and ask questions, not a treatment, but more just like a sharing of knowledge, because I think sometimes knowledge is a lot of power sometimes, and if you understand how we're put together as people and what we need, it can actually really help. So I've got an idea at the moment to do some sessions where maybe you can just even possibly pay by donation, or I'll set a fee of some description where people can come and just even maybe an existing patient, if they want to find out what I'm actually trying to do, because all I'm ever trying to do is rebalance someone back to their natural potential, nothing more, nothing less, and allow nature to take its best course. But I think understanding some of these dynamics now, the work in the body, can be really useful. So if anyone feels to want to come sometime and just come and sit and talk about some of the areas of knowledge I've got, or some of maybe some questions about their treatment. Like I said, it wouldn't be a treatment as such, because that's a different type of energy, but I'm certainly very keen to share as best I can some of these things I've picked up over the years from some of the people I've worked with, and some of the experiences I've had myself. So stay tuned and come and see me. Thanks.